We're live and we're back for another YEV. YEV.
Why not?
Exactly. And I'm here with Kevin and Alex. And basically, we're going to be talking about charging, EV charging, electric car charging versus fuel stops. Now, I thought where we could start is fuel prices. They're cheap, aren't they, chaps, at the moment? Petrol.
3-year low at the moment. And it's interesting, actually, if you go on the government's CSV page. They've got a spreadsheet going back, to the 2000s, and if you scanning back to 2012, petrol per litre is about the same price it is now.
So there's nothing
moved up and down a little bit in the meantime, with the exception of the big jump during the big energy crisis a couple of years ago.
The wars, all the stuff that affects it. So I don't know what people are complaining about in fuel prices, because there's a lot of complaints. But I mean, comparing that to electric, I mean, 2012, I didn't have an electric car back then. Kev, what was it like when you had a EV?
I was going to say, well, I first had one in 2015, and then it was very cheap. It was free for all the electric highway things. So much so that we actually have an electric highway site probably 2 miles from my house. So we never charged at home. We always rapid charged the Renault Zoe because it was much cheaper to rapid charge it on the electric highway.
It can't get any cheaper than free, can it? Let's be honest. So I mean, fuel prices. It's funny, isn't it? How I think EV drive should be up in arms. I'm literally up in arms about pricing, but it's mainly, obviously we're not up in arms if you've got your own driveway and you can charge from there. But this video is all about talking about charging tips and versus petrol. So where should we start, chaps? I was thinking maybe, what bad experiences you guys might have had with charging. I think I've only had 2 after 3 years. What about you guys?
I think we've had a shared one, haven't we? But we can come back to that in a minute. But
I think what was probably the worst charging experiences back in 2015, probably when we had the Zoe. We probably averaged about 1 breakdown a year for running out of energy, and that wasn't because the car's fault. It was because you turned up at an old DBT charger and it wasn't working. So, I mean, that's the worst kind of charging issues I've had. But now I find it easy now because there's charge hubs everywhere. It's one of those things, isn't it, where you see a lot of the car that you drive. It's the same as once you have an EV, you see lots of charging infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure. The issue I had early on, I mean, I was commuting from Cardiff, where I am now, up to an office in St Albans, back in my early days of Fleet World, stopping off to charge twice on the way, which I used as a pit stop. I got it down to a fine art getting in and out of Lee Delamere and Reading services, tapping my Ecotricity card as I went, and getting to ignoring the warnings as I went up towards Membry, which is all uphill, coming down the other side to Reading. On the way up, it would always tell me I wouldn't make it to Reading, and you just ignore that, and you know that you're going to make it there, and you have about 15 to 20 miles of range left. Plug in again at Reading, get to the office. But the worst part of that was that the nearest place to the office to plug in was South Mims services, and because of that, they had an AC 22 kilowatt, and they had the only rapid charger they had there was a Nissan only one with just the DC CHAdeMO side. So I couldn't plug my Zoe in there. I had to stick it on charge in the office on a 3-pin plug for the morning, and then kind of crawl my way down to South Mims. But I think I would say if I was kind of talking more developed network stage, I think possibly one of the most unnerving charging experiences I've ever had was with a friend of mine, Martin. We did a Kona long haul drive, and one of our charging stops on that was I think it was a BP Pulse unit, and it was around the back of an industrial park in Hereford, and it was pitch black. So we plugged in to charge. The charging experience itself was fine, but literally the only source of light where we were was the screens on the charging points.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd been there with my wife and my kids, that probably wouldn't have landed particularly well. And it wasn't particularly nice being in the pitch black, and also by that point needing to go and find a bush nearby, and also then every couple of minutes going kind of waving at the light sensor to put some extra light on us. So things have come along quite a long way since then, haven't they?
I think we could all agree that type of issues have pretty much been ironed out now. And I think what the militant, I'm going to call them militant people out there that think that EVs, they take too long and all the rest of it. Let's talk about time, because everyone goes on about electric cars, they take too long to charge, which in my mind, for me, is just a load of bollocks, because all I do is I get home, I plug it in, and that's it. It's just on the rare occasion where I might be doing a longer journey, I will need to plug in. And now I would say the chargers are working absolutely fine. But in terms of waiting for a charger and waiting while you're charging, I've only, out of the 3 years, and I've done 50,000, nearly 60,000 miles in my Tesla. I've only ever waited for a charger once, and it took me 5, maybe 8 minutes to wait and there weren't that many Tesla chargers. It was a busy time in the middle of there's not many chargers in that area, but it was literally not a bother at all. Have you guys ever waited, not while charging, but have you ever waited for a charger?
I'm wondering if Kevin's remembered this yet, but do you remember on Evros, on the day my last charging stop of Evros, the final
Evros,
EV Rally of Scotland in 2021, the last charging stop before Fort William, all the chargers in Fort William fell over. And obviously with a rally, you've got a whole load of cars all going the same way. And I thought I'd been quite smart charging beforehand. And when I got to the charger that I'd planned to get to, there was already somebody plugged in on the to the AC side of it. There was a Zoe plugged into that. And there was a Polestar plugged into it that the person was keen to fully charge. So in the time that I waited, and then the person behind the Polestar waited, so I was third in the queue. And in the time that I was waiting, Kevin turned up as well. So we all ended up getting bottlenecked at this point. But generally speaking, I haven't really found myself waiting. And these days, there's so many charging points that ordinarily you've got a plan B if plan A is out of action, or it's But I tend to just aim for the hubs these days, especially if I've got the family with me. I just kind of go, well, I know that I can go to a grid serve or a big like places like that, and that there's going to be a charger available. And now I've got the Tesla ones as well, which are great. I mean, we did one yesterday. I refueled the went to see Kev yesterday. The fine job of sorting out my son's computer, which is still acting up because computers are a nightmare. I realised I'd forgotten to charge the 600, so I just popped down the road to the local supercharger, plugged it into charge. I think I paid 50p per kilowatt hour, which is, in rapid charging terms, is quite cheap these days.
Yeah.
And plugged in for 10-15 minutes, went off, grabbed myself a bottle of water and a couple of bits and pieces, snacks for the trip up. And by the time I got back to the car, I had more than enough to get to Kev. So, yeah, easy.
Yeah. What about yourself, Kev? Kev is on. Kev. he's focused. He's very, very focused. So. Yeah, I mean, we've all had a few issues with chargers that have been broken, but like you said, I think if you focus on the main, the bigger ones, you don't have an issue. I have seen at Rugby, there's a lot of chargers there, although the ones that I think it's GridServe, I've seen a lot of people wait for those, but there's loads of Tesla ones, so there's no issues there. But funnily enough, I went there recently, put a little video on the old TikTok, and there's actually loads more going in at the moment. Kev's had enough. There's loads of new ones going in because I don't think they were particularly reliable, and there weren't that many, and they weren't that quick. But I think I was talking to Kevin and Alex earlier about, we talk about price, and that sounded like a really good price that you had, 50p per kilowatt hour on a Rapid. That's nearly as cheap as Tesla prices there, mate.
That was the Tesla charger. Yeah,
there we go.
As in for a Tesla, Tesla driver. Yeah.
Tesla. So basically, I had a conversation. I can't remember who it was with, but he made a really good point. If you're in a petrol or diesel car, you don't go to the motorway services and fill up to the top because it costs like 20p per litre more. And you do exactly the same thing. But when you're doing any public charging, whether it's motorway or anywhere else, is you only charge as much as you need to get back home to your cheaper charging if you have it. I'm not saying that everybody has, driveways and cheap charging by any stretch of the imagination, but that is the way to do it. And yeah, I mean, luckily, me talking about Teslas again, the Tesla actually tells you when you've got enough to get to your location, which is any other EVs out there that tell you, do you know, Alex, that tell you how much charge to go? Well, how much when you can plug out when you're ready to move on to the next place?
So Volvo and Polestar have got that now on their new model, and I believe Volkswagen's added it. Although I've not actually done a long enough trip in a Volkswagen, the latest Volkswagen EVs to do it. The system on the Volvo and Polestar is pretty similar, and it seems as intuitive as the Tesla one. So
you're in the middle now, Alex. Kevin's just slid on the side there. Kevin, what happened?
Weirdly, my Wi-Fi went off. I think I may have knocked the connection when I was fiddling with PCs yesterday.
I've offended it with my.
Yes, you mentioned the PC. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Don't you just hate technology sometimes? Unless you're in an EV. Okay. We're talking about fuel costs, Kev, and we're talking about the fact that motorway services are much more expensive, and the fact that you would only top up, like if you're in a petrol or diesel car, you only top up as much as you'd need to when you can find a cheaper petrol station. And exactly the same applies with electric charging. Is that what you do, I take it, in terms of trying to save money?
Yeah. The only problem I found more recently is that cars charge too quickly. So by the time I've plugged the Ioniq 5 in and it's pulling 200 and odd kilowatts, you're there. By the time you get back, by the time you've grabbed something to eat, you're like, oh, it's almost full. I don't want it to be full.
Well, this is the other element, isn't it? That we get, any EV and the EV scene gets bashed for is the fact that, oh no, charging takes too long. If I'm not charging at home, and I'm sure we've gone on about it before, but it's not like you just wait in your car for it to charge. You can either be busy doing stuff in your car or watch Netflix or do whatever that your car is able to do. Or you go to the toilet, you grab a coffee, what have you. And when you come back, most of those charger points that Alex mentioned, the grid serves and the Ospreys or any of the decent ones, which are going to be 50, 150, 250, you're going to have enough to get to your next location after 10 minutes, unless you're going on a really long stint. And then you just need a Tesla because it's that much faster, chaps. Just saying.
I mean, we experienced when we did the John O'Groats to Land's End in the MG5. There was it Exeter services where it charged too quickly, and we were like, oh, it's full, and then we were.
Oh, you're those people, charge till you're full, are you? Oh, I see what you're saying.
We did actually. Yeah, there was a guy, wasn't there, up in. Somewhere up in Scotland. Was it Inverness where there was a guy charging his e-tron and he was fully charging it? We had to wait for him. That is the only other time that I've had to queue for a charger.
Yeah. Like I said, only once I've wait for a charge, and like I said, it just unless you're really really depleted, and you need to be there for half an hour because it's a slower charger. But it's pretty rare now. I mean, things have really moved on, and I think people don't really realize that EV charging is a hell of a lot better. Yes, there's still places which aren't as good, but your car, generally speaking, can work that out, or you can work it out yourself. It's not exactly difficult. So yeah. But in terms of charging, the thing that I'd like to talk a bit more about is the fact that AC home charging. What is going to be the solution? Because that's probably chink in the armor that EV adoption has got a massive challenge at the moment. I mean, have you guys seen anything else out there that's kind of helping with that?
I think it's going to be it's a tough nut to crack, that, isn't it? It's a case of, I guess, there's going to be a need, I think, for. I mean, I think faster charging is more important almost than having massive range. I think we're already at the point where we're almost reaching the point of an excess of range now with new vehicles. Because in the UK, I mean, it's hard to do more than sort of 50 or 60 miles per hour as an average even on the longest journeys. So you should really be, even if you're a hardened kind of, bladder of steel, 20-something who's determined to get from place to place, you're really going to struggle to do more than like 3 hours or so behind the wheel before you should be taking some sort of break, really. And we're at the point now where you can get quite a chunk of that range back. And then at what point are you kind of going, well, actually, I'm not even going that much further than this anyway, so I don't need to do the full 80%. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of stuff gets talked about in terms of 0 to 100%, 0 to 80%. And I think there's a big thing in what you were saying earlier about the Tesla thing and the Tesla system, where it'll plot a route and it'll tell you the fastest way to get from here to here is if you stop here, 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 and here, and you stop here for like 17 minutes, here for 11. There's minimum detours off your route and all the rest of it. Stuff like that, I think, is so important in terms of kind of making this feel really easy for people and just getting heads around the technology. And I think the charging experience is so central to it. And as I say, more important, I think, than kind of stuffing massive amounts of kind of raw materials into vehicles and having that wait the rest of the year. Because most people don't do lots and lots and lots of long journeys. And you can cater for both if you've got something that charges really quickly, as opposed to something that necessarily has large amounts of range.
Yeah, I think also destination charging. I'm quite lucky because at my workplace, bear in mind I drive from Northamptonshire down to Southampton, and that's about 120, 130 miles. In the summer, I can do it in Tesla, no issue, and I'll get home with about 10%. But now the weather's got a bit cooler, rain, lights on, all these other things, then now I actually do have to charge a bit at work, and that's like 35p, which I'm not going to argue that price, because that's actually not too bad. It's like cheap Tesla pricing, or during the day, home charging. But how does that really compare to the cheapness of fuel now? So, £1. Go on, sorry.
No. I was going to chip in after you, but yeah.
I was going to say £1.30 for a petrol car. What are you getting in your petrol car at the moment, Kevin? Bear in mind you're borrowing one at the moment. About 50 miles per gallon?
I'm sitting at 60 miles per gallon at the moment, but it is a small, efficient 1 litre 3-cylinder car.
So what's if at 60 miles per gallon? What's that for £1.30 per gallon? Can anyone do the maths on that?
So it's 4.55 litres to a gallon, isn't it?
Yeah. So, oh God, I've actually got a spreadsheet somewhere in the background that can do all
there
of this.
There we go. Alex, you jump on the spreadsheet, because I'm really interested to know, is me charging at work still cheaper than getting a petrol car? Bear in mind, we're not talking about the servicing costs. We're not talking about the running costs. We're not talking about all the things associated, which are extra for a petrol and diesel car, but just really the fuel, because everyone focuses on the fuel, because the fuel is the big thing, isn't it, Kev?
Yeah, I think you'll still have the edge. I think even that those rates, there won't be a huge amount in it, but I think the EV will still be slightly cheaper. This is off the top of my head maths, which Alex will confirm with proper maths in a minute.
I'm just trying to find it.
I'm base it on 4 miles per kilowatt, because that's what I get in the Tesla on the motorway. Just chilling, 70 miles an hour.
You're getting what in the Kia?
60 mpg.
So, I can't.
We should add some music in the background for this as Alex works out the cost here, because this is real life costs. We're not talking media trying to get a headline for clickbait. We're not talking someone that's trying to make EVs sound boring and dull and like white goods, which is it tends to be the comment at the moment. No soul, etc. Well, what's Roland saying? Hi, Roland. The fill the tank syndrome is where the time to charge arguments come from ICE drivers. Fill up, EV drivers stop and top up for the next leg, and 80 to 100% leads to criticism of slow charging. No, absolutely. And volt and bolt, or all the other analogies that are out there. Can you think of any, Kevin? Volt and bolt?
Can't think of any at the top of my head. But I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to try the fuel car was actually to bring balance, to say, look, I wanted to try and compare them side by side, do similar trips, see the MPG, and actually be realistic and do the costs for all, rapid charging, home charging, and say, look, this is where one has an advantage over the other. As you say, it's all about balance, and we want to say the facts of what situations one might work better than. We know it's all about air quality at the end of the day, but some people don't have that option. They need something that's a cheap car.
Well, talking about air quality, I was driving a diesel this week, Kev. Don't fall over. It was actually a loan vehicle for when Rusty was in for MOT, which I must highlight, she failed on a tyre and a number plate. And the number plate because someone backed into my car in a car park. And unfortunately, my Sentry mode wasn't on, which I'm a bit gutted about. And the tyre is, yeah, it's just inside wear. Nothing to do with my driving or it being lowered, perhaps. I don't know. It looks like Alex might be ready for us.
So go on. What's your cost per kilowatt hour at work?
35. I think it's 35p. It might be 34.
8.75p per mile versus 10 in the Kia.
There we go.
So my maths in my head was about right then.
Yeah. There we go. I mean, I'm going to use that example now. I genuinely will use that example because ultimately 35p is, I would say, a good normal price for charging your electric car. Although,
equally, so yesterday's trip to Swansea. I mean, this is obviously assuming as well, because the one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is charging losses, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But cost per kilowatt hour on the cost per mile for my trip to Swansea in the 600E yesterday, I was averaging a little under 4 miles per kilowatt hour at 50p a kilowatt per kilowatt hour. That's 12.5p per mile. So I mean that would have been more than the Picanto, and that's quite common as well. I mean, I think if you take those motorway journeys in isolation, this is what people don't. It's quite a hard thing to understand. Is that most of your journeys are local. A lot of them you're charging at home, and when you do that first leg of a motorway journey, you're still using energy you've put in at home, and it's cheaper, and it's kind of balancing out everything across the whole lot. But on the motorway, my Polo in the background here, which is not. It's not a particularly inefficient car, but it's not massively efficient either. It is cheaper per mile if you're filling up on the motorway than the Rifter.
Well, the Mod Scotsman's just given us a really good example there. If charging is 50p, then petrol and diesel is cheaper. And ironically, as I was going to say earlier, is my most local AC chargers, which which are now working now. They weren't working before. They're about 54p. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, how? No one's going to be using them. I have seen someone using them. I'm just thinking, well, why? I mean, obviously you need to charge your car sometimes, and that's a must-have. But I think I was collared on a comment I made about that the councils and the government should be paying for it, and say, why should the councils be paying for it? Why should they? Well, who else is going to pay for it? I mean, you could argue some private companies and that sort of thing might get involved, but I don't know. I just feel that councils and the government should be paying for it. That does mean that everyone's got to pay for it, but there's other things that we're paying for that is probably less beneficial to everyone. Weapons of many wars. What?
I guess there's two solutions, aren't there? If you're talking about the residential stuff where people don't have their own place to charge, you either need lots of AC charging points or you need a hub of DC units where the prices are discounted if you live locally. So you almost have instead of a resident parking permit, you have a resident parking permit. There's also an RFID card and linked to your home energy, and you get discounted per kilowatt hour rate. And then you have a visitor's rate, maybe that's your normal kind of 70, 80p per kilowatt hour. To sort of discourage other people from using it, but to have that infrastructure there in case other people do need to use it. So, resident charging hubs could be one way, but I think, the AC side of things and enabling people to install that infrastructure and manage that energy use is going to be really important. I
like that. I like that. If it's your street or it's your nearest charger, you get a beneficial rate. But if it's not, then it goes up. I think that's a really good idea, actually. I think a lot of people would agree with that one. Kev, what do you reckon?
Yeah, there must be the technology now with people talk about all these things with blockchain being able to address billing stuff. There must be a way of doing it so you can pay the same rate as your home rate in a residence area. So you have, as Alex said, that residence RFID tag, which means you pay the same rate. And I think it does need to be addressed because, as we said, if it's over 50 pence, there's no incentive. And I think it's still too soon to not have the carrot to encourage people to go EV. There needs to be something, because, you know, all the early adopters, the people who want to do it for pollution and air quality and stuff, have done that. We're now on the everyday people who need a reason to do it. Yeah, in the same way as people have bought more efficient cars over the years, they need to be able to say, oh, well, I've saved a bit. I've got this new car. I've bought a new car, but it's a bit more efficient. And then we need to do something with the charging. I mean, and that's something I think EV manufacturers need to address with this increase in size. As lovely as the EV9 is, it is still a massive car to drive around. And I think that, like there was the focus on efficiency with fueled cars, there needs to be the focus on efficiency with EVs, because you look at a lot of cars, there's not a huge difference in the efficiency. The EV9 is broadly similar to Alex's Rifter on efficiency. And you're thinking, well, there's a lot more EV9 than there is Rifter.
Alex, no fighting with Kevin on that one, because that felt like a low blow, although quite accurate. I mean, you know, I like the EV9. I like the fact it's efficient. I like the fact that they're replacing the very unreliable and nickable Range Rovers and stuff. And I'd rather see them on the road than those vehicles. But yeah, you know, they are very heavy. What was it like? What did we say last time? It's about 2.5 tons, wasn't it?
It weighs as much as the Rifter. With our Rifter, we've got a long wheelbase 7-seat Rifter. Stick the Polo on the roof bars and stick me in the Polo, and then it's the same weight as an EV9, and I'm not joking.
Jesus wept. That's pretty big. Pretty big.
I think the roof bars are only rated for 75 kilos, though. So
yeah, I think we may have other problems in that, but yeah, equally that, and I don't think I'd want to be putting the Polo on the poor Rifter either. So it's
no, it wouldn't be wise. So yeah, I think we've got to remind ourselves that we are in a transition. You know, it's not a cliff edge, and we need to look at the benefit. You know, everyone is just coming out with the negatives, and there's always going to be that, but it is still early in the transition. I mean, I know that there was the Nissan Leafs in the early days and the Tesla Model S's, but it only feels like it's starting to make some real progress with infrastructure, certainly the last couple of years. And I think he's the one that, what's the minister, the MP that looks a bit like something out of Wallace and Gromit? He was saying that there needs to be more infrastructure. I don't think he was positive about the infrastructure that's already out there. And I think there needs to be some more positive language or out there to give people more faith. And like I think you said earlier, Alex, or maybe Kevin, the fact that you just need, you know, if people see it, it gives them confidence. And I think, you know, even at petrol stations and service stations, electric prices X, you know, just so, look, there's another one there. There's another one there. I mean, it's all money, isn't it? Not that anybody's got any at the moment, so it's a tricky one.
But the government seems to have some quite interesting ideas about how to approach this. Does anyone remember the Great British Charging Point from 2021? Do you remember that?
Oh, there was a competition, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was unveiled during COP. I can't remember what number COP it was in 2021, but the climate conference in Glasgow. There was an unveiling of a Great British Charging Point that had been designed through a competition, and I remember looking at it and thinking that's been designed by people who've never really had to use the infrastructure, because it was an AC charging point. It was probably about sort of so high, and well, lower than that, it's kind of belly height, I guess, and it had a tethered cable with a big loop-shaped handle on it. And I looked at it and I thought, well, that's not going to go into anything where you've got like a Leaf, where you've got, you know, like quite a steep angle to get it into, or a Honda E or anything like that. It doesn't solve things like visibility. From a visibility point of view, it's not tall enough. You need something with a light on it that you can spot easily in a car park. And tethered cables, I mean, my God, cables they're a necessary evil on DC chargers, but AC stuff, there's no need for them because, well, number one, you exclude your early Leafs and things like that from a start point, but also that cable is ordinarily hammered to hell by the time it's been on there for a while, because people drop it in puddles. You know, they smash it. We've seen an AC charger on.
Remember that one?
think I might even have it on my phone somewhere. It was the surround from the Type 2 charger had gone, so it was just the pins poking out. And it's like, stuff like that is not, again, that public perception thing. It's kind of, if you've got to pick up a dirty, smashed cable off the floor, not good. The government's got to talk to actual EV drivers and kind of go, what do you need out of this experience? And I think a lot of it is visibility, and a lot of it is that kind of a familiar, consistent, convenient, visible charging network is really important.
No, the visibility thing, the first ever charger, DC charger that I charged up at, it's literally in the middle of nowhere, quite close to me. And I was charging an Audi RS e-tron GT, which at the time was £140,000 vehicle before prices dropped. And I was charging up to go to a EV track day in Wales. So I had to charge it as much as possible because that's a long old journey. And this was, I think it was the first long journey or proper journey I'd done other than a few miles in an EV. So I was a little bit nervous and all the rest of it. And I found a charge. It was like 50 kilowatts. So I did have to wait. But like Alex's experience, which you mentioned earlier, it was complete darkness. And it was just like, not sure about this, not ideal. Roland's got put a good point in here, and I think I've got the answer for you. So more smaller EVs are required. Not all ICE cars are SUVs. 80% of cars are 4-5 door saloons or hatchbacks. Just look at the car park. So why are most EVs SUV sized? Okay, I'm going to give you the perfect example of why EVs are SUV sized. What car do you think my wife would prefer to drive? An MG5 or an MG ZS? It's a really easy answer because you know it's going to be the SUV, isn't it? So I think it tends to be female persuasion there. Although my wife loves the Tesla that we've got, but if she had a choice, the SUV is the preference. And I'm at the moment I'm focused on a really cheap 2021 plate 39 kilowatt hour Hyundai Kona because I've gone off the MG ZS. I know it's probably a good car, but I just know I'll be looking at Konas going, should have got one of them. So I'm just going to hold tight, wait for a good price one.
But equally, SUV is quite a broad church, isn't it? I mean, I think what's quite interesting, if you look at last year's best-selling EVs, the SMMT list of last year's best-selling EVs, they're all quite large. They're all what we'd call D-segment cars. So you're kind of Tesla Model 3 size, SUVs, things like ID4, Model Y, kind of 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 meters long, big cars, most of them. Apart from like MG4, I know Kona is in Kona, and I think Nero in there as well. They're all quite big cars. Whereas if you look at the top 10 best-selling cars, you've got things like Corsa, Puma, Mocha, things like that in there. And as much as Corsa and Mocha are both available as electric cars, those are actually a relatively small portion of the sales on it. They're not even registering amongst the top 10 best-selling EVs. So yeah, the best-selling EVs in the UK are big cars. And there's definitely a need for those kind of compact. If we're going to have stuff that's SUV sized, just scale it down that little bit.
And because we know the manufacturers can do the efficiency. Because you go back to the wind knife, the old original Ionic, and that was when manufacturers, because they had the small batteries, they made the effort to make that small battery go further. Because you think now, I reckon in a similar weight for the original Ionic, you could get a 60 kilowatt hour battery and you'd have a ludicrous amount of range in the original Ionic. And they did the innovative things then. The Ionic had aluminium bonnet and stuff like that. Where's the innovation gone? It's like, it seems in some respects it's become a bit lazy and made heavy stuff rather than doing the innovation in the clever stuff. What happened to the clever stuff that Audi used to do? Back in the petrol days, the Audi A2, the 1 litre, Alex will correct me on this. What was the really efficient version of it?
It's all down to bottom line, isn't it? Just to highlight PWN e-motors, and I just looked up your name actually, and he's doing a Tesla powered Mustang. So big respect to you. Go and check out his YouTube. I just saw he's got some build videos on that. So anyone listening in, PWN e-motors, check out his YouTube channel. Looks interesting, mate. I'll check it out later. It also more challenging to squeeze 300 miles, of batteries in a small car. And this is going to be this technology piece as the transition goes on, as battery technology and battery density, power density gets bigger. But yeah, that kind of makes sense, because I mean, how many people are really going to be buying in volume a Mini E? I suppose it's more of a second car, isn't it? They're going after, because these electric cars are costing them so much money. They need to be putting something out there that people buy. It's as simple as that, really.
There's another aspect to that as well, isn't there? In that a lot of them at the moment, because of the discounts, the incentives that are available to people who are on company car schemes, a lot of them going to people on company car schemes, and by nature of the cost of those vehicles, if you're in a grading structure, you may not be eligible to get something like a Tesla Model 3. That's a bad example, actually, because the Tesla Model 3 is actually really quite cheap. But you may not be able to get something as big. You know, I mean, saying that, it's still a £40,000 plus car, isn't it? Your company car grading may not allow you into a vehicle like that if your company's not kind of adjusting for the whole total cost of ownership side of things with it. You know, all of the BIK, benefit in kind tax discounts that you get for going electric, if you're not able to actually choose a vehicle of that value, they're wasted on you anyway. So I think there's going to be an element of that that's distorting the kind of vehicles that are available anyway. Because there are plenty of small EVs available, but they're not selling in massive volumes either. That's the other side of it.
No. On that side of things, sorry, it's a Sniff and Smith thing. If anyone listens to that, sweet guys. So and Roland's just mentioned lazy manufacturers. I don't think it's just laziness. I think they just want to go for the, you know, like I said before, where the margin is, where they're going to make some money. But I think a lot of them are struggling at the moment. So yeah, it's well. I want to talk about something more positive. I'm getting down, guys.
But just on that margin thing, you know, that's, as you said, look at how many manufacturers don't make A-segment cars in petrol, electric, diesel at all now.
Yeah.
And back in the days, you know, you used to get little Fiesta diesels and stuff. Now you don't even get the Fiesta. So
no. Well, maybe we do need to just open the floodgates and let the Chinese EVs in more. The Dacia Spring type vehicles, in terms of something that's going to be 15 grand, you know. Although I must admit, you can get a Tesla Model 3 15 grand now with not bad mileage, so at least gives people more of a choice. It's EVs, eh?
But I think, going back to that point about the big battery side of things, it's that loop again, isn't it? I know I keep harping back to it, but the speed of charging and being able to do short kind of splash and dash type stops, you don't necessarily need to have a small EV with 300 miles. You can get away with 200, 220 if you've got something where you can do much shorter stops. And if you're able to have a more efficient EV that also charges more quickly, you can lessen that need to have oversized battery packs for the rest of the year. You're just carrying them around, aren't you? So
Roland's just thanks for interacting so much, Roland. Anyway, back to charging. Thanks. He's steering us now to where we were. I do think community charging is an interesting concept. Small banks in village halls, car parks, etc. Yeah, I mean, a battery somewhere, I suppose that's not a bad idea, and it only gives you a certain amount. That's I suppose that's one concept, especially if rather than putting a load of, although batteries, they are very expensive, but then battery storage is not cheap at the moment.
But then you link it with kind of, battery storage and solar. Why haven't all these village halls? Why don't they make it easy for them to put solar and charging? That's one of the ways to enable it, and there's grants for those type of community type projects.
I wonder if we're doing things like RFID, community charging type things. I mean, I think we touched on this briefly the other week, but a similar system that would enable home charging points to be shared would also be quite interesting. I mean, especially if you've got lots of on-street parking. If you enable, as they are at the moment, you can have a home charger fitted with some additional red tape, admittedly, compared to having one on a driveway or in a garage. You can now get grant funding towards on-street parking charging points, which is a really big step forward. But it doesn't guarantee that you'll get that space. So if you live on a terraced house, a row of terraced houses, you might not get to park outside your house most of the time. But if most of those houses or all of those houses have got a charging point, if you could have a system where it would aggregate your usage of whatever charging point you park outside, whether it's attached to your house or not, and then you can find a way of invoicing that, even though it's, I'm making this sound more complicated than I wanted it to. But if you had a system where it would know, it would credit that house's utility bill with your usage, back, and you would be billed for that as part of your utility bill, even though it come off another house's charging point. Do you know what I mean? Or am I kind of tying myself in knots here? But I think there's that kind of, if you have the infrastructure there, you use whatever charging point you park outside. It'll be a residential one. It might not be attached to your house, but you have a centralized billing process where it just knows what you've used and then credits whatever everyone else has used off your bill. It takes that off and bills the other people for it. So a bit like a kind of a standardized kind of co-charger type system.
It's a bit like Electriverse can do with your rapid charging, can't it? Electriverse can charge it not off a card. It can charge it directly to your electricity bill. So surely we could, there must be a way technology-wise to implement that on home charging. I mean, and that's the thing is, maybe when they were trying to mandate stuff, they should have mandated the ability to read an RFID card for something, because that would have been a simple thing to implement, because they've become really cheap. Everything's got RFID capabilities in it now.
A long time ago, sorry.
No, you go, mate.
I think it was back in 2016. I went to do a conference over in Oslo, and they were showing us around a car park there, and all of the chargers were opened by locked and they were free to use, but they were locked and unlocked with an RFID card. Any RFID card, whatever RFID card you had on it, basically turned into the key. So you turn up, tap it, and it pops open. You plug in. I think you tap it again and it locks to the car and you start charging. I tried it with a hotel room key and it worked. So it was that kind of just use whatever you've got. So if you were using, everything's got RFID cards in it these days, doesn't it? RFID chips in it. So you could use, your phone, your bank card, anything with and I think stuff like that's quite interesting as well. Obviously things have moved on now, and you do have to pay for charging everywhere, but it's little things like that, and kind of having kind of a centralized way of billing people for using for using charging wherever they pick that up, especially on the residential side, is going to be really is going to be helpful for kind of driving that forward.
I'm going to delve into a bit of the technology side now and the potential pitfalls of charging and buying it. So if there was schemes for villages and lots of different, businesses as well, it's a real minefield of what is reliable out there, because there's certain AC and DC chargers out there that are absolute rubbish. I would never, ever pay the sort of money for these particular chargers because the reliability just isn't there. And a really good example of that, that's what's happened recently with EO chargers, and I think there's another couple of brands as well, is the fact that they've literally stopped being able to connect with them. There's something called OCCP connection to chargers, which allows basically a back office software to be able to connect to it to work out who's charging, how much are they charging. And there are companies out there that have got loads of chargers out there, and they're literally just shutting it off, making the charger completely useless. So I think it's difficult to know who to trust out there, because there's lots of charging companies out there, and they're obviously just trying to sell their wares. And there's certain brands, like I said, that are just not reliable. And charging infrastructure is a lot of money. So when councils or villages or businesses are spending and making as I see it, the good step towards electrifying, whether it's for their customers or to make money from the electric supply that they've got, it's not great at the moment. It does seem like there's a bit of a Wild West still. I think there does need to be some more, whether it's legislation or some standards. I know these things are coming in. So, for example, anything public charging over, I want to say 8 kilowatts, has to have a certain standard. It has to have pay for every charge, and anything that's 50 kilowatts and more has to have a certain uptime, and if that uptime is not there, then they start getting fined. So things are starting to come through, but it's if anybody wants some advice on that, please send us an email, chargeheads@gmail.com, because I'll try and help you through it and what I'd recommend. But you guys know much about the ins and outs of that?
Well,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think the thing is with the legislation is I think they need to make sure they involve the user group. So EVA England, and consult the kind of user groups within that and actually build the legislation around real world situations, because we can all have this nice theoretical thing where it's like, oh, this is what it would be in a perfect world. But the big one, which I think has caught a lot of people out, with the new legislation, is the 8 kilowatt thing. So there's a lot of organizations and companies are going to shut down and close to public use their 22s because it's not cost effective to put an RFID, a contactless card reader on a 22 kilowatt AC.
A lot of money. Yeah.
There's no need to backdate on the 8. It's only over the 50s. It's rapid charges plus have to be backdated, but the 8 kilowatts, I don't think. Sorry if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm sure it's with 8s it's new installations only, and 50s it's everything. So you have to backdate.
You fact check yourself, please, Alex, on that.
Because I think the 22s
or CNN will be on you.
I think the 22s you have a stay of execution, as it were. So you've got like 2 years or something. Because I was surprised, because I thought it would be you wouldn't have to backdate them, but there's just a delay on the backdating of 22 kilowatt AC. Whereas I think if they talk to the user groups, they would have said there's a differential between DC charging and AC charging.
So the regulations say new public charge points of 8 kilowatts and above and existing charge points of 50 kilowatts and above must be contactless. So it's
everything.
No. So it's everything after 24th of November this year. Anything over 8 kilowatt installed after that date, has to be contactless, and all public charge points of 50 kilowatt and above. Okay. So you've got to backdate it if it's 50 kilowatt and above, but anything over 8 is a new installation.
Funnily enough, before I left a certain charging company, we'll call it Essential EV. Someone else selling another EV company, they were putting in these Autel chargers, which were very customer focused chargers. They had a nice screen on them, good for advertising that you put videos on and stuff. And they were 40 kilowatts, and they were like, look, no, they weren't. They were 47 kilowatts. So it's a bit of a loophole. It's like, okay, let's put that one in, because do you know what? It's not. It goes under the regulation. You got the opportunity of advertising on the screen, which is extra revenue as well, and you don't have to worry about the extra service and maintenance potential costs, because these things all mount up. You got have you got enough power? Do you have to go to DNO? DNO is going to cost you a load of money to get extra power, and it's going to take some time. Then you got to dig all the infrastructure, which costs a lot of money. Then you got to buy the hardware. Then you got to do the service and maintenance, and you've got to have a back office system that works, and the payment, pay to tap terminal, and you're going to get charged X amount of pennies for having a system to be able to bill that. It really does mount up. So I think, any loophole that a business can find like that, it's an Autel 47 kilowatt. I would recommend, although it's Chinese, I would recommend that as a good charger. It's finding those little loopholes rather than having to spend the big monies, really.
Well, the penalties are huge as well. I mean, they're thousands and thousands of pounds if you're not meeting those requirements. The interesting thing as well, I mean, what you're saying about the 8 kilowatt thing is that, and the loopholes. We're now starting to get quite a lot of cars coming through with 11 kilowatt plus charging capability. The 600 that I've got has got that capability. And I find that you've got kind of something to fill the gaps with the rapid charging network, and people won't necessarily be installing them for that reason that you say, where it's like, well, I don't want to go over 8 kilowatts. I don't want to offer sort of capability for 3-phase charging, because I don't want to deal with the extra headaches of and the extra cost that's attached to it. So I think you're probably right. There will be a market, won't there, for equipment that doesn't quite meet that grade, even if it's not ideal for the circumstance, just to keep the cost down.
Yeah, because you think if you look at one of the vans, which is quite an interesting one, there's 3 vans on it. So new Renault Kangoo, Mercedes C10, and the Nissan one all support 22 kilowatt 3-phase charging. And you know, if you're a depot owner, that's one of those things that you think that would be that's a great way to turn them around quickly. But you could put loads of 22s in, but you can't open them to the public now because of your actual cost for putting the contactless reader on them.
And do you know what's a really good thing to benefit these sort of depots? It's the new software that I'm selling, actually, chaps. The end-to-end transition software from Dynamon Zero. So if anyone's interested in, a fantastic EV plan to make sure you're being efficient with your infrastructure and charging and making sure it works and showing how it works, then little plug there. And I think we've come to a natural end, but I think it'd be worth us talking about any deals that people have seen. And while people are thinking about those, I'll say that yesterday I was checking out the TVR, the Tesla powered TVR. It's still going, I promise. A few people said, are you still doing that? Yes, we're about 3 years deep. But there's an updated video coming out on Wednesday, which should be really interesting for people. It's getting so close now. I think there was a bit of a delay, otherwise the wheels would actually be moving. So we're really, really close. And last week, really good video with DIY EV conversion Russ, electric powered Lotuses and electric Ducati and some really, really cool stuff. So check those out. And in terms of, we got the Fully Charged Live coming up couple of weeks. So I'm going to be there Friday. And if anybody fancies it in the Leicestershire area, we've got a modified EV, and any EV enthusiast meet on Sunday in Fleckney. It's on the socials on Facebook, and that's at 1 o'clock. So pop along, come say hello. Chaps, what are you up to?
Well, we talked about deals, but the one that caught my eye this week, because ironically it landed the same day as my final report on the Corsa in diesel car and eco car. We're talking about small cars and kind of right sizing and all the rest of it. I lived with a Corsa for a few months, top of the range, ultimate long range, just shy of £40,000, and that cost thing was a constant talking point every time I spoke to people about how good the car was in the time that I had it. Vauxhall has actually just cut prices almost across the range for the Astra and the Corsa Electric. And significantly, one of the things that I noticed on this is that all versions of the Astra Sports Tourer Electric, apart from the top spec Ultimate, are under £40,000. So I wonder if we're going to start seeing a lot of stuff nibble under that £40,000 VED bracket for next year, because road tax VED is going up. We're getting it for EVs next year. And anything registered from April onwards will qualify for the expensive car supplement of about £400. It'll be by that point. Which means you could end up paying £600 a year to tax an EV for the first 5 years that it's on the road.
There we go. Kev, have you spotted anything out there in the wild?
As much as I'm going to hate to say this, is there's some quite good lease deals on Teslas at the moment, which are actually significantly less than I pay for my lease deal on my Ioniq 5. So,
well, you live and learn, Kevin. You live and learn. As I'm the used EV deal correspondent, I like to think I am. If you've got 10 grand or you want to go out and get a 10 grand loan, there are so many good electric cars you can get for that money. You can get a Mazda MX-30 if you don't care too much about range. You can get a Hyundai Kona. You can spend a little bit more, probably another 3 grand, get a Kia e-Niro. Alex is going to tell me that you can get his own car for that sort of money now.
No. I was going to say I'd go for the Kona over the MX-30, but
yeah, absolutely. I've seen some really good deals on MG ZSs as well, MG5s, of course. I did see a really good deal, 7 grand for a i3 2016, which is a 100-mile one. It done 113,000 miles, but I don't think you need to really worry about BMW battery degradation because it's been proven pretty strong. And on that note, I have got a video coming very soon about Altelium, which is a battery and motor warranty company. When your EV's out of warranty, you can go to them. They'll do a test and you can pay money and get extra warranty. It seems really good. And I'm going to be doing a discount code on it when that video comes out. So check it out.
super important innovation, that, isn't it? The battery degradation certificate is a big deal.
Absolutely. Oh, and before I forget, sorry, Kev, I actually got 2 battery modules for sale from the TV. I picked them up from Rouse. I've got these 2 CATL battery modules. They're both of them, if you connect them, will make up 48 volts, but they're about 2,000 amp hours. Unfortunately, they don't fit in Tri-Key down here. I did actually try and fit them in Tri-Key, but sorry for the mess. But unfortunately, they wouldn't fit. So I'm going to have to go and speak to eBay about getting another battery for that. Sorry, Kev, you were going to say something, I think.
Lost my train of thought on that one. Been distracted.
I'll do that. Squirrel. Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, thanks for the chat. Thanks everyone who contributed. No, don't forget to give us a like, give us a share, and we'll see everyone next week. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Cheers.